That night didn't seem unusual at first. The forecast mentioned heavy rain, and where I live, that's never really a surprise. Storms are part of life here. We've gone through heavy rain before, watched water gather on the street before, and waited for it to pass. Nothing about the early hours of that night suggested it would turn into something unforgettable. But as the evening went on, the wind started to sound different. Not just stronger, but wrong. The rain wasn't falling anymore, and it was slamming against the house. It felt constant, aggressive, like something was being pushed against the walls again and again without stopping. I remember standing still for a moment, listening, and realizing that the storm wasn't passing. It was building. I looked out the window and saw the street changing shape. Water was moving faster than I had ever seen it move there. What had been puddles were suddenly flowing in one direction, like a shallow river forming in real time. The wind dragged debris across the road. Trash cans tipped over, branches snapped and vanished into the darkness. The sky didn't flash anymore. It stayed dark, heavy, sealed shut. My dog was inside with me the entire time. He always sensed storms before I did. He paced back and forth, stopping near me, then moving again, unable to settle. Every thunderclap made him flinch. He stayed close, watching me, as if waiting for reassurance that everything was going to be okay. Then the power went out. For a brief moment, there was silence, and then the storm became even louder. Without electricity, every sound felt closer. I could hear rain forcing its way in, wind pushing against doors, the structure of the house reacting under pressure. The darkness felt heavier, thicker. That's when the water began to enter the house. At first, it was subtle, a thin line creeping along the floor near the entrance. I remember thinking it would stop, like it always does. I grabbed towels, tried to block it, tried to convince myself it was manageable. But within minutes, the water didn't creep anymore. It rushed. It climbed. It spread across the floor faster than I could respond. I started lifting things, moving what I could, grabbing papers and small items that suddenly felt important. The floor became slick beneath my feet. The smell of wet dirt, sewage, and debris filled the air. The sound of water moving inside a place where it should never be was terrifying, and in the middle of all of that, I realized something that made my heart drop instantly. My dog was gone. He wasn't beside me anymore. He wasn't following me from room to room like he always did. I turned around and didn't see him anywhere. I called his name, once, then louder, then over and over, raising my voice to fight the storm itself. I moved through the house, checking every space I could reach, but the water was already too high in some areas. Furniture had started to shift. Chairs floated slightly before hitting walls. Standing upright required effort. Every step felt unstable, like the ground itself was betraying me. The moment came when I understood I couldn't stay. Staying meant risking my life. And yet, leaving without him felt impossible. I stopped near the doorway, turned back toward the darkness of the house, and called his name one last time. I waited. I listened. There was nothing. Just rain. Just wind. Just water. Outside, the street no longer existed. Everything was submerged. I couldn't tell where the sidewalk ended or where the road began. Sirens echoed from somewhere far away, distorted by the storm. People shouted. Some cried. Others just stood, watching their homes fill with water, unable to do anything. I looked back at my house as it was being swallowed, and that's when the thought fully formed in my mind. I thought I had lost my dog forever that night. The feeling wasn't just sadness. It was emptiness. Guilt hit hard. I kept replaying every moment in my head, wondering if I could have done something differently, if I should have searched longer, if I should have stayed a few seconds more. Fear followed right behind. Fear of knowing the answer might already be final. Time slowed down in a cruel way. The storm showed no sign of stopping. The wind stayed violent. Trees cracked and fell nearby. Objects floated past as if gravity no longer mattered. I sat in a safer area, soaked, cold, staring into the darkness, imagining my dog trapped somewhere inside the house, or worse. Rescue teams eventually reached the area. Firefighters moved through chest-high water, tied to ropes, guiding each other through streets that no longer looked like streets. Their flashlights cut through the rain in short, shaking beams. Everything about the situation looked dangerous. I hesitated before approaching one of them. I knew people were the priority. I knew lives were at risk. Still, I forced myself to speak. I told him my dog was missing. I described him, his size, his color, where he usually stayed. I didn't expect anything. I just needed to say it out loud. They listened. They wrote it down. They asked a few quick questions. They didn't promise anything, and I didn't ask them to. The waiting that followed was unbearable. Every siren made my heart jump. Every flashlight cutting through the rain made me look up. At the same time, I tried to prepare myself for the worst, because nothing about that night felt merciful. Then, much later, something changed. I saw flashlights moving closer, slower, more deliberate. I heard voices nearby, and then I saw a firefighter walking toward me, struggling slightly, holding something tight against his chest. At first, my mind couldn't process it. Then the light hit. It was my dog. Soaked. Covered in mud. Shaking uncontrollably. His body looked exhausted, like he had used every ounce of strength he had left. But he was alive. Everything stopped. The storm didn't matter. The destruction didn't matter. The fear didn't matter. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I just cried, uncontrollably, like all the pressure, guilt, and terror of that night had finally found a way out. The firefighters told me they had found him on higher ground inside the house. He had climbed and stayed still, trying to escape the water. They said they almost missed him. The sound he made was faint, barely noticeable under the storm. But something caught their attention, and they chose to go in. They entered despite the current, despite the risk, because they heard something they couldn't ignore. That night, strangers risked their lives for someone they didn't know. For a life that wasn't human. To them, he was a dog. To me, he was family. And before this story ends, let me say one thing. If what you just heard meant something to you, if it reminded you of someone you love or a moment you were afraid of losing, take a second to let me know. Leave a comment. Even a few words matter more than you think. Stories like this don't survive on their own. They only keep being told when people choose to listen, to react, and to support the channel. If you want to keep hearing real moments like this, moments of fear, hope, and relief, consider subscribing. It's the simplest way to make sure these stories don't disappear. After that night, nothing else mattered. The house was damaged. Possessions were gone. None of it compared to the feeling of holding him, feeling his breathing, knowing he was alive. That night taught me something I will never forget. Even in absolute chaos, there are people who refuse to give up on life. Any life. I thought I had lost my dog forever. But listened, because someone cared. He came back home. And every time it rains heavily now, I remember that night. Not with fear, but with gratitude.